Okay, so this is going to be Chapter 6, Section 1 that we're going to get into now. This chapter is going to be a little bit lengthy. It's talking about the legislative branch. And so we're going to discuss the role of the legislative branch, examine the census process, describe the members of local and federal government, and examine congressional committees. Every year, 535 Americans meet in Washington, D.C. to make new laws and address countless issues facing our country. This is Congress. They are made up of 435 members of the House of Representatives and 100 senators, which we've already discussed before, so you need to go back and watch those videos if you're not understanding this. The framers intended for the legislative branch to be the most powerful, even calling it, quote, the first branch of government in the Constitution. Now, if you remember, under the Articles of Confederation, there was only one branch of government, and it was Congress. And so it is the first branch of the government because it was the only one under the Articles of Confederation. Each term of Congress is divided into 2 sessions or meetings, typically last from January until November or December. It can have a joint session, as with the State of the Union address. The 2 sessions are 2 years. Each Congress has 2 years that makes up a term of Congress. And so one session is 1 year from January to November or early December. The other term is January to early December of the second year. And then the next Congress takes over. At the Constitutional Convention, the big debate was representation. Now, remember we talked about this with the Virginia and New Jersey plans. How are we going to have representation? It's going to be based on the big states, the small states, population, equal representation, which came up with a great compromise, which resulted in a bicameral or 2-part legislature that will have both the House of Representatives and the Senate represented. The House of Representatives have 435 members, which is based on population. Remember that electoral map where California has 55 electoral votes because they have 53 members of the House of Representatives, or we only have 7 because they have a lot bigger population than we do. Census is a population count. We did this last year. We did the census last year, and it's the representation for each state is based on the census. So if you remember last year during the census, one thing that people talked about a lot was Alabama possibly could lose a congressional district or gain a congressional district or stay the same. That's because a congressional district is determined based on that state's population. So every 10 years when we do a census, the state's population count either increases or decreases, and that can change the number of representatives that they have. Each state is divided up into the congressional districts, with each state representing one district. Constituents are people represented. So we would be the constituents of, for example, in Alabama, District 4 under Robert Aderholt. And so we would be his constituency. A gerrymander is an oddly shaped voting district designed to increase voting strength of a particular group. For example, if they know there's a certain area, like an urban area, that would vote more Democrat, they may gerrymander that in to form a Democratic district. It's going to always vote Democrat for the most part. That's really the purpose of it. They say it's, to put this area and this area, but really the main focus is to map off weird-shaped districts that will get more people voting Democrat, so that would be more Democrat district or more Republican district. An example of this is if a state's representatives are Republican, they may draw the lines to help have more Republican districts. Representatives serve for 2 years. The House of Representatives, each member of the House of Representatives serves for only 2 years. They're able to be close to the people, dealing with things that people in their district care about rather than the whole state. So Robert Aderholt has Winston, Walker, Franklin, Colbert, Marion County. So he's going to focus more on rural areas. He's not going to be focused as much on the big cities. He's going to be focused more on agriculture, focus on the local schools and things that are important to us, because he represents us. Where the person that represents in a certain area of Chicago isn't going to have the same focus as our representative. And that's the whole point of having them close to the people. Now, I'm not going to go through all these. We've already went over before. You can go back and look at them. But these are all the different representatives that makes up, there's ours, Robert Aderhall, that makes up Alabama's members of the House of Representatives. The Senate has 2 members, 2 from each state. Senators serve for 6-year terms. The election cycle is staggered, though, where no more than a third of the senators come up for re-election at a time. So what happens is we have 100 members of the Senate, 2 from each state. They serve for 6 years. But so it's not 6 years and then everybody's getting reelected. In 6 years, everybody's getting reelected. If out of 6 years, every 2 years we have another senatorial election. And in that one, about 33% of the senators, 33.3, 33, whatever, percent of the senators are brought up for re-election at that point. 2 years later, another 33%. 2 years later, another 33%. So every 6 years, it makes a full cycle. Kind of felt like Doctor Strange. If you don't watch Marvel movies, you probably get that. These are our senators, Richard Shelby and Tommy Tuberville. The Senate is divided up between the majority and minority parties. The majority party, obviously, is the party that has the majority of members. Right now, in the Senate, technically it's 50-50, but the Democrat is the majority party because they have the vice president, which acts as the president of the Senate, and she is the deciding factor in voting. So technically, the Democrats have the majority of the House and the Senate. The minority party, which right now is the Republicans, are the party that has the minority of members. The Constitution states that the House shall choose their Speaker and other officers. So the Speaker of the House is the most powerful leader within the House of Representatives. The Speaker of the House is always an experienced member of the majority party. They get voted on and by their party and to determine who's going to be the Speaker of the House. Currently, the Speaker of the House is Nancy Pelosi. And so here's some information about her. Speakers rely on their power of persuasion just as much as their formal powers to exercise influence. On a typical day, the Speaker talks to dozens of members of Congress. She'll have, a lunch meeting and a breakfast meeting and a supper meeting and then an afternoon meeting and a late morning meeting. And so she'll meet with people throughout the day talking to different members of Congress. The Speaker does this expecting something in return. I put he'll, but right now it's her. She'll listen to their concerns if they support the Speaker on big issues. So basically, she's like, what you got for me? I'll support your bill if you'll support me in this area. I'll vote the way you want me to. And it seems corrupt, but that's the way politics works. The presiding officer of the Senate is technically the vice president. The president pro tempore president pro tem is the person that acts as the chairperson of the Senate. This person oversees the Senate when the vice president isn't there. Currently, it is Patrick Leahy. He's a Democrat. He's from Vermont. But here's some information about him. He was the presiding officer over the second Trump impeachment we had a few weeks ago. Each house has well-established ongoing committees and those used for short-term purpose. A standing committee is a permanent committee. They're there all the time. The Senate has 16 standing committees and the House has 19, covering areas such as education, veterans affairs, commerce, things that aren't going anywhere, things that are pretty much consistent. Most standing committees are divided up into smaller committees. Congress also has select committees, which are made to do a certain job. For example, in 1976, the House formed the Select Committee of Assassinations to investigate the deaths of John F. Kennedy and Martin Luther King Jr., and it disbanded when it finished. Once they did their investigation, there was no longer a point to have that Select Committee, and so it was dissolved. Joint committees are committees that include both the House and the Senate. It joins together to discuss economic policy usually. You also have conference committees, which are committees that help the House and Senate agree on details of proposed law. And so they basically meet up to talk about the specific details of laws so that the House and Senate can come up with the ideas of what they are going to do with those. When senators and representatives get elected, they try to get on certain committees to be used to affect the people electing them. Someone from a farming district, for example, would want to get on an agricultural committee. Seniority is years of service. The people that have served the longest tend to get the best spots on the committee. That's the idea. Usually, if you have been in your position for a long time, you're going to get the best committee spots. New people usually have to settle for whatever's left. And they want to get on things that are specific to their district, things that are important to the people that vote for them. And that brings us to the end of section 1. So we will continue with section 2.